Hi guys, Miss Hallie here. We are going to make our data anchor chart. So you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil to start off with. Please do it in pencil so you can make it nice and neat, and if you make a mistake, you can erase. I'm going to be doing mine in marker just so you can see it, but you will be doing yours in pencil. And then if you want to make it color-coded when we are finished, you can. Okay, first thing we need to know is what our notes are all about. So we're going to give it a title. And our title today is, oh, you guessed it, data. Or data, tomato, tomato. Data. Okay, so put that nice and big at the top of your paper. All right. Now, what is data, you might be asking? Well, data is a piece of information. We can collect data by counting something, measuring something, or doing experiments. So let's write that down so we can remember. That's the whole point of doing this, right, guys? So we can remember. All right, so data is a piece of information. Piece of information. Okay? We can collect data by counting something. Measuring something. Or doing experiments. Okay, so press pause, get that down, and then off we go with the data process. Okay, this is really interesting, guys. The data process is, you'll notice, it'll look really familiar to you, and it's really interesting. Okay, so we're going to write now data process. Okay, the data process. Now, if you have a ruler, that would be great because Miss Hallett loves straight lines. If you don't, then that's okay. You can try to be as nice and neat and straight as you can. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a line that's just gonna go right across my paper. This is why I love graph paper, because it can go right across. Okay, then I'm going to go down a bit, and go across again like a nice big rectangle. Okay, now a nice big rectangle, and I need to make it into 5 boxes. Okay, so I know I'm going to need 5 boxes, so I'm gonna kind of gauge where my boxes need to be. There's the middle box, and then I need 2 boxes over here. Ooh, okay, right here, there we go. Okay, so this is a process. So I'm gonna be labeling this process 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I'm in the corner over here, I'm gonna put 1. This is the first step to collecting data, okay, or collecting information. We're going to ask a question. Next step, okay, is number 2, and we're going to collect the data. Next step, drawing an arrow there, is number 3. And it is to organize, and represent the data. Organize and represent the data. Next step, number 4, is to describe and summarize. The data. And number 5 is to interpret and make conclusions oops, didn't have space, that's okay, and ask new questions. Okay, and when you do that, then the process starts all over again. You're going to ask a new question and it goes whoop, and you start the process over again. Okay, so very interesting process, you guys, and it kind of looks like a method that we use in science called the scientific method, or the engineering and design process, that one too. So ask a question, collect data, organize and represent the data, describe and summarize the data, interpret, make conclusions, and ask new questions. Now, what do you mean by ask a question? Well, here's an example of a question I could ask. Now, I'm going to number it, number 1, so you know that number 1 goes with number 1. Okay, so here's an example of a question. How many students have pets? That's an example of a question that we can ask to collect some data. Here's another one. How many days did it rain in Hesperia in 2020? We could ask that question and collect some data. Now, the second process to collect data, that means we have to take a survey. We need to ask people, or we need to measure, or we need to do our experiment. So that would be, collecting data would be a survey. It would mean to measure, or you're going to do your experiment. Okay, that goes with number 2. Number 3 is to classify or put into categories. So number 3, you're going to classify and put into categories. Okay, then number 4 is where you're going to put your data into a graph. Okay, now this will all make a lot more sense once we get practicing. Okay, number 5, the last part right here is going to be, so when you're interpreting and making conclusions, that's when you are going to ask yourself, what does this data say about whatever you ask the question on? What does this data say about then whatever you took your survey on or whatever you did your experiment on? Okay, so for example, what does this data say about how many students that have pets? What does it say about it? Maybe it says only 25 students out of 50 students have pets. Okay, then if you ask a new question, you're going to ask yourself, if this changes, if this changed, then what would happen? Okay, and then you would repeat the process. Okay, I know it's a little small, but it says repeat process. Okay, so here is an information sheet here that you can refer back to whenever you need to. So make sure that you make it nice and neat so you can read it, so your teacher can read it, so your auntie and uncle can read it, so your grandpa can read it, so your mom can read it, so anybody could read it. Maybe a scientist someday. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.